And our parents would say, oh, no, little John or James, you can't drink. You can only drink when you're older. That's something that adults do. And in that moment, when our parents explained that to us, they implanted this idea in our mind that alcohol is like a rite of passage. Alcohol is something we get to do when we're grown up.
Yeah.
But the reality is that alcohol is nothing more than attractively packaged poison.
Welcome to the Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets. I'm John Blake. This is episode 222. And today I am particularly excited because I have James Swanwick with me. And James is an Australian-American stop drinking expert, author, investor, entrepreneur, and former Sports Center anchor on ESPN. He's the creator of Stop Drinking Organization, Alcohol Free Lifestyle, which gives business owners and executives it's some finally breakthrough from alcohol without AA, rehab, or willpower. The host of the podcast, Alcohol Free Lifestyle, and author of the upcoming book, Clear, the only neuroscience-based method for high achievers to finally break free from alcohol. So this is a subject that I'm quite passionate about. I gave up drinking 7 years ago. So and I've had it's been an interesting journey along the way. So I'm really, really interested to talk about this from the context of being a business owner, being a leader. In the chat that I had with James just before we hit record, he shared with me some clear data on what drinking is costing business owners. So I'm pretty interested to hear about that. But welcome, James, mate. Awesome to have you on bright and early.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm originally from Brisbane, but I live in Medellin, Colombia with my wife and daughter.
Got it. Wow. Awesome.
Spent a lot of years in the US as well. Like I lived in Brisbane until 93, and then I lived in Brisbane until 98, and then I went over to London for 4 years, as most young 20-somethings do at the time. And
yeah, as you do.
Stayed there till 2002, and then I went over to California and lived in Los Angeles for a number of years, went to New York for a number of years, tried out Austin, Texas, and then found my way to Latin America, and I'm based in Medellin, Colombia, and my businesses serve mostly American clients and customers. So Medellin, Colombia is a good, favorable time zone for me to be able to do that because it's the same time zone as New York.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. Yeah, it's an interesting part of the world to live in for sure. I had a toe cracker on. He's from Peru. So he's an expat living in Peru. Are you familiar with who I'm referring to?
No.
He's a copywriter, like an old school copywriter guy. So, mate, great to have you on. And so I guess, maybe a great place to start would be your journey. I'm going to be assuming that at some point, you've made the transition yourself, but mate, I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, well, look, as we're recording this, I'm almost 50 years old. Like I said, I grew up in Brisbane, and I grew up in a socially acceptable culture in Queensland of drinking beers and getting drunk in your late teens, and then drinking with your colleagues in your early 20s and going to the football or going to the crickets and having a bottle of wine at the end of a day's work. And, I did that and thought it was normal right up until I was about 34, 35. By that stage, I was living over in the US, and I realized I'd put on about 30, 35 pounds. So it's, getting up close to 18, 20 kilos, which had kind of, packed it on since I stopped playing rugby in my earlier days. And I was in Austin, Texas. I was at the 2010 South by Southwest Festival. And I went out to a party where they had an open bar. And I had 2 Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics. And then I went back to my hotel just outside of Austin, went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I just felt blah. Like I felt average, mediocre. I wasn't rock bottom, right? I wasn't an alcoholic, wasn't getting drunk and getting arrested and getting DUIs. But, I had like a good half to a full bottle of wine most nights of the week for 20 years, and beers and gins and whiskey and Jack Daniels and all the other stuff. And I looked in the mirror that morning in the hotel and I went, "Ugh, you look average. You feel average." I had fat rolls. I had bags under my eyes. I could taste the gin from the night before. And I went next door to this IHOP, which is this international house of pancakes. It's like a fast food breakfast joint in America.
Yep.
And I'm sitting in there and I'm going, what am I doing in an IHOP? And I looked out the window and I said, you know what? I got to figure out how to take a 30-day break from alcohol because I just feel average and mediocre. I wasn't sleeping well. My relationships weren't great. I was envious of other people's success. I was trying some business things that weren't working out. I just generated a modest income for myself. So I said, that's it. I'm going to take a 30-day break. So I did. And after 30 days, I lost about 6 kilos, about 13 pounds. My skin looked better. I slept better. I attracted a great romantic relationship. I auditioned to become a television host on arguably the world's most iconic sports TV news show over there in the US called SportsCenter on ESPN. And to my utter bewilderment, they gave me the job. And I ended up hosting that show for 2 years. And I credit being clear from alcohol, the clarity, focus, and energy to helping me get that job. And then from there, I turned myself into an entrepreneur. And the alcohol-free lifestyle that I had chosen just kept getting better and better. I haven't drunk since 2010. So, 15
Wow.
years. And, people often ask me, what do you attribute your business success to? And just to be clear, my business is, I run a high-ticket coaching business. We help mostly high achievers, executives, and entrepreneurs to stop drinking alcohol without having to go to AA or rehab. And then I also have an e-commerce business. I produce blue blocking glasses called Swannies from my company, Swanwick Sleep. And both of them have been, I would submit, wildly successful, in part, if not mostly, because of the clarity, focus, and energy that I have had from living an alcohol-free lifestyle. So that kind of brings me to the current day. Haven't drunk in 15 years. I love it. I now help high achievers like yourself, John, and I'm sure your listeners, to finally choose an alcohol-free lifestyle. That's kind of my main business now.
Awesome. I love that. And there's I guess a couple of different step-off points. I like the fact that you were like, well, it's not like I was, waking up in strange beds, not knowing where I was with strange women. It's not like I was I got arrested or was in a prison cell. You just sort of got to that point where you were like, yeah, this is probably something I should probably just give this a rest. You're sitting there just about to order a serving of pancakes going, because that's what thinking back, it's like, well, one choice leads to the next not so good choice, leads to the next not so good choice, and then suddenly, it's that Chris Rock bit where he talks about when you go to the ATM at 2 a.m. and he reckons that the ATM should have a voice that says, "Come on, man, what are you doing?"
That was probably me I would have appreciated that at the Treasury Casino in Brisbane in the late 90s, actually, at 2 a.m. Stop. Do not withdraw more cash.
Yeah. What are you doing? Why don't you just go home?
Yeah.
So I love that bit, but I guess there's, there are other people that are probably further down the line. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, The Naked Truth, where she talks about, being on, like, there's like a continuum. I've got a narrow screen here, so I have to, so there's a continuum, and there's people that drink once, maybe once a week, and then there's people that drink, every other day, and then there's people that drink every day, maybe just at night, maybe just one glass, and then there's people that are at the next step, which is they probably have a drink at lunch and one at night, and then there's other people that have a drink in the morning. And her whole thing was like, well, everyone is on a continuum. And there are some people that are, probably drinking most of the time during the day wherever they can. And then there are other people that are, that are on the other end of that continuum. So, and the other thing that's, and I didn't even read that book. My wife did, because she loves to drink. She has started drinking less since I gave up. So that's an interesting thing, like the effect on other people around you. So we should probably chat about that. I love the fact that you were just at that point for yourself. You weren't necessarily at rock bottom, but you were ready to make a choice. And I wonder how many people. I mean, I've heard my brother say that. It'd be good to. I think at some point everyone has had that thought. I mean, for me, it was I got to a point where I would just have one drink and get a headache straight away. I'd have one beer and get a headache straight away. I'd have two beers and wake up with a hangover. And I was like, well, I'm not getting drunk, so it's not like I'm sort of missing out on a really good time. And it wasn't happening every time, but it was happening more and more often. And when I'd get a headache, I'd have the headache for like 2 days. So I was just like, well, this is a pretty easy choice for me. And at the time, I was, like you, I was looking to lose a few lbs, which I did. I was working with a personal trainer who didn't drink, and that was 7 years ago. And in the interests of transparency, every now and then, like if we're going out, if we're at a nice restaurant or whatever, I might have an espresso martini. But to me, that's dessert. You know what I mean? Like that's not a drinking thing. That's just I'm having dessert, and that might happen 3 times a year,
Yeah, it's interesting because the people that we support at my stop drinking company, Alcohol Free Lifestyle, and what I reference in my book, Clear, is that you don't have to hit rock bottom to realize that alcohol is compromising most areas of your life.
Yeah.
And the common stories that I hear are these. I got trouble sleeping. I've put on too much weight. I'm irritable. I'm not connected with my wife or my husband. I'm not present with my children. I'm not spending enough time with my kids. I'm foggy in the afternoon. I just need alcohol to relieve myself of the stress of work and family. Oh, but, I've tried just drinking on a special occasion, but that didn't work. Or, I've tried moderation. I'll just drink on weekends. And what I would submit is, especially if you're a business owner, and your listeners here, John, are mostly business owners, if I understand correctly, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can make an appeal to your listeners now about the consequences of their drinking as it relates to their health, their wealth, their love, and their happiness. But what I have found is that the biggest tipping point for most folks is relationships with their husband or their wife or their kids. And a lot of folks are in the drift of life. They're just stuck in a rut, or they're just slowly dying by 1,000 cuts. They're not quite sure what's wrong, but there's something wrong, and they're just drifting, right? But for the benefit of the business owners, in a second or in a few minutes here, if you want to go there, I'd be happy to illustrate to your listeners how their drinking is probably costing them millions and millions of dollars. Now, that'll be interesting, I'm sure, and be somewhat of a wake-up call for a portion of your listeners. But in my experience, what I've found is even if it's going to cost you millions of dollars, the main reason why people still stop drinking is because they reach a point in their marriage, or they reach a point in their family life, or with their kids, or with their health, where they just say, the pain of this is too much. I gotta make a change. I have to make a change. And just to speak financially again, let me tell you, getting a divorce ain't that cheap, John.
No.
Right? And if your drinking is leading to marital strain, a divorce is going to cost you potentially millions of dollars, right? Not to mention all of the pain. And again, I want to be clear. This is not aimed at an alcoholic. This is aimed at you, the listener, listening right now, who may believe that your drinking is just modest. I don't drink that much. I'm just having a glass or two a night and a few on the weekends. I'm fine. Well, don't be so sure. There was a 2022 study that came out of the UK that looked at 35,000 middle-aged adults. And what the results showed was that even one seemingly innocent drink per night, that's only 7 standard drinks a week, okay, was enough to destroy gray and white matter in the brain. The headline of that, or the bumper sticker, is even one drink a night causes some level of brain degeneration. Now that shows up in you don't make the best strategic choices in your business. You don't fire that person. You procrastinate. You don't hire that person. You don't make an additional sales call per day, which could lead to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars more.
Yeah.
You kind of drag your ass around a little bit more. Now you've got some financial strain because you're not operating at a 9 out of 10. Instead, you're operating at a 6 out of 10 because of your drinking. Well, let me tell you something. The difference between operating at a 6 out of 10, where you're irritable, tired, foggy, distracted, just craving that drink at the end of the day to relieve yourself of that irritability and stress and anxiety, and a 9 out of 10, where you are alcohol-free and you are clear, focused, you've slept well, you're happy, you're joyful, you're connected. The difference between those two figures is hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? And so sometimes for very logic-based entrepreneurs, like we all are, sometimes that gets through, the penny drops, right? Based on logic. But mostly what I've experienced is that if you're listening to this and you're questioning your relationship with alcohol, my suspicion is that it's because it's causing some kind of family relationship strain.
Absolutely. I mean, and I can loop this back to a sales analogy, because it's only when the cost of doing nothing becomes greater than the cost of change.
Well said.
And we can talk about the cost of change, I mean, or perhaps not so much the cost of, well, you just talked about the cost of change, but the resistance to change. There's a couple of things that I noticed, when I was giving up, and because I'm a systems guy and I look at things in terms of process, it's the kind of lens that I look through. And what I found is that when I first gave up, people that I used to drink with, I noticed a couple of things. The first one is that I had this realization that there were people that the only thing I had in common with them was getting messed up, getting fucked up, basically. That was the only thing that I primarily had in common with them. And those people stayed, I stayed friends with them, but the nature of the friendship certainly changed. But the other thing that I noticed was that it would take 3 exposures to that person for them to stop offering it to me. So the first one would be like, what are you having? No, I'm good. What do you mean? Oh no, I'll just, I'm right. What do you mean? Oh no, I'm just going to have a soda water with some fresh lime. You sure you don't want to drink? Yep. It's like, and then I would see them again, and I'd have the same conversation, and then I'd see them a third time. So, and it took probably, I reckon, 2 or 3 years for me to be exposed to those people that I used to drink with 3 times, and for me to say no 3 times in a row, for them to then get that I was serious, and then someone else would offer me a drink, and they'd go, "What are you talking about? He doesn't drink anymore." And they would defend me at that point. But for me, at the age that I was at, which was sort of mid-40s, to get to the point where no one would offer it to me, that was what I worked out. It was 3 exposures to those people and 3 no's. And I use the old. And one of my mates taught this to me years ago, where someone goes, what would you like to drink? I said, no, I'm fine. Well, what do you mean? Oh no, I'm good. Come on. No, I'm fine. What? And the sort of, the almost sort of semi outrage. And there was one particular situation where I said to the person, "Are we still friends?" Because she was getting mad, It's like, how is me not drinking maddening or that upsetting for you? Are we still friends? So there was that to achieve escape velocity, I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
and
that's cultural conditioning. I mean, that is,
especially in Australia, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying especially Australia for years, but you know what? I've traveled the world, and I think we just removed the word especially now. Like, it's in so many cultures. I see it in parts of America. I see it in Ireland. I see it definitely in parts of the UK and Australia. So, but yeah, I mean, look, this cultural conditioning, it started when we were little kids and we saw our parents drinking, and our parents would say, "Oh, no, no, little John or James, you can't drink. You can only drink when you're older. That's something that adults do." And in that moment, when our parents explained that to us, they implanted this idea in our mind that alcohol is like a rite of passage. Alcohol is something we get to do when we're grown up.
Yeah.
But the reality is that alcohol is nothing more than attractively packaged poison. That's all it is, because alcohol is toxin. It's toxins, right? And we put it in a very fancy bottle, and we create advertisements and commercials on the beach, and we have attractive looking people, and we create humor in these ads. And then there are smiling assassins all over the place. And a smiling assassin is your friend or the waiter or the waitress coming up to you going, "Can I get you a drink? Oh, hello, Mr. Blake. Welcome. Can I get you started with a glass of attractively packaged poison? Oh, hello, Mr. Swanwick. Can I get you started with some regret and shame? Can I get you started with about 10 unwanted pounds of body fat?" That's essentially what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we go to a party, let's just use a scenario of Australia, right? Like a backyard barbecue. When we go over and we're a guest at someone's house, the guests definitely want you to have a good time, and they want to be an hospitable guest. I'm sorry, a hospitable host. And so they'll smile and they go, "John, great to see you. Welcome. Hey, mate, can I get you a beer? Can I get you a wine?" And they're smiling as they're offering you this poison. And make no mistake, it is poison. And one drink is enough to destroy gray and white matter in your brain, right?
Yeah.
Now, they mean well, because the cultural conditioning is such, like, they want to be a good host and they want to offer you a drink. And the way that a drink has been portrayed over decades and generations is fun and the symbol of bonding and a symbol of relationships and a symbol of celebration or commiseration, right? And of course, we see this. Like, you go to the AFL Grand Final, you watch them celebrate, they go back into the changing rooms at the end, and what do? They shake up champagne and they all drink it and they pour it over everyone. You see it after rugby games. What do? They crack open some beers. They all sit around and go, "Oh, we've just been in a battle. Let's have a couple of cold ones," right? And so it just keeps perpetuating this myth that drinking poison together somehow creates a bond, somehow creates romance. We must have a bottle of wine if we're going to create romance with our partner. I call BS on that. You can bond with your friends without consuming poison. You can create romance without consuming poison. You can celebrate without digesting poison, right? And so this cultural conditioning led to your friends 3 times offering you a drink and you saying no. It's just the conditioning.
Not to mention every hero that we've ever seen in every movie. What do? You know what I mean? Like every, action movie, every high grossing film, everyone's drinking. Every tough guy film, everyone's got 3 fingers of bloody, scotch in a lead tumbler. When they have in almost every scene they're drinking. It's
James Bond, martini shaken, not stirred. Fully. And if you watch that TV series Mad Men, it absolutely glorified alcohol in New York.
Yeah. The amount of booze they've drunk in that thing.
Yeah. And like champagne, let's break down champagne, right? Champagne is just toxins. It's piss, right? Yep. It's flavorful piss. Okay. That's how I refer to it. But when you put it in a very attractive, sleek bottle and you put a cork on it, and then you dress up a lot of men and women in elegant attire, like a man in a dinner suit or tuxedo and a woman in a fancy dress, and then you pour this piss out of an attractive bottle into a very sleek champagne glass amongst people who are wearing tuxedos, dinner suits, and dresses, and the occasion is very elegant and sophisticated, then we associate this piss with elegance and sophistication. But make no mistake, we're just drinking piss. We're drinking urine, essentially. Yep. I mean, there's absolutely no health benefits to any amount of alcohol. And yet we stand around with these smile on our faces going, oh, let's have a drink. Let's have a drink. Here's the worst thing that I see, John. Not the worst thing. Let's just see it. Another one of the ridiculous things I see. You're at a party, you're at a social event. Someone says, let's get a photo. Okay, great. Now, what are the people in the photo going to do? If they're holding a drink already, when they pose, they're going to hold the drink out, right? And if they don't have a drink, they'll go, oh, hang on, let me get a drink.
Yeah.
And then they hold this drink like it's a prop, as if to display to the viewer of this photo, this is the good life. Look at me holding my attractively packaged poison. This really shows that I'm having a good time on vacation and this sunset at this end of year party. I'm living the good life, drinking this piss.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. But you watch it every time, and this is what happens. So I'm not here to hypnotize anyone about choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle, but I'm definitely here to dehypnotize you regarding the so-called pleasures of drinking.
Yeah, the reality of what we're actually doing. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Reuben Guthrie.
Haven't.
I think it needs to probably become a staple on your to-watch list. So it's about this guy who's in advertising. He's an Aussie. It's played by the same guy that was the I don't know if you've seen Colin from Accounts.
Actor's name's Patrick Brammall.
That's him. So he plays this advertising executive, and he and in the world of advertising, everything is long lunches and boozy, and he gets to a point where I think he jumps off the roof of his own house into the pool and breaks his leg, and realizes that he's got to do something. And it just goes through the thing that we were just talking about in terms of that escape velocity, and all these people that just, his dad owns a restaurant, and I think his dad's like Jack Nicholson. Is it Jack Nicholson? No, Jack
Nicholson.
Jack Thompson. Jack Thompson.
Yeah.
So his dad owns a restaurant, and he goes to and he's just like can't get his head around the fact that he won't have a drink, and it's just a very real film about what it actually takes to give up drinking, especially from a cultural perspective. I remember going to you were talking about the restaurant. I remember going to an Italian restaurant, and it was and I think we were celebrating something, but I remember I remember actually getting alcohol shamed by the waiter, right? So this guy was a sommelier, right? So he's Italian. His whole life has been around, palate and, and wine tasting and all the rest of it. And he comes up to me and says, what would you like? Or would you like a glass of wine? And I said, no, I'm fine, thanks. And he actually he drink shamed me. And in that moment, like, there was like 2 or 3 seconds of, I want to stand up and strangle this prick. You know what I mean? Like, and then I sort of thought beyond that and thought, okay, well, his whole world revolves around that. So, and he probably comes from a region of Italy where, where everyone drinks from the age of 2, and you know what I mean? But for a couple of seconds there, I was just like, I am your customer. And if you don't stop that shit, I'm going to fucking stand up and rip your head off. So yeah,
Crazy.
But that film in particular, I think, could become essential viewing for some of the people that you work with. But there's a whole bunch of stuff, like just the media stuff, the way that the hypnotic way that we've all been preconditioned to accept it. Like my wife and I, when we watch movies and TV and stuff, we just like, wow, like the amount just the way that alcohol is used as a prop in films is just crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Super Bowl was on recently in the US, and I was watching with great interest the commercials.
Yeah,
and Coors and Bud Light did a couple of very impressive television commercials with some local stars. Peyton Manning is a very famous former quarterback. And then there was a country music star. I've forgotten his name, but he was in it. They're very funny, very well produced, really very well done commercials, but I was just sitting there watching them going, wow, this is just brainwashing at its
Yeah.
height. Brainwashing people into thinking that drinking a can of beer is a good idea, because it's not. And people listening might go, oh, geez, lighten up, mate. Have a beer. I can't. I mean, I have an Instagram account. I got about 250,000 followers. I can't tell you how many times in the comments section people say the same joke and they think it's funny, which is, oh, come on, mate, lighten up, have a drink. I'm like, I must have heard that 10,000 times over 5 years of having my Instagram account. It's just like the joke, and it's so boring.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was interesting watching those commercials, because it's just perpetuating this myth, right? That alcohol is something that we should aspire to do. And what it actually does is it has us bow down at the altar of alcohol. Do you remember that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark with in 1982? I think Spielberg directed it. It was with Harrison Ford. He's playing Indiana Jones. And then the opening scene, he's got the idol and he's escaping the rolling ball. And then he kind of jumps out. And at the last minute, he has to hand the idol over to the Nazi. And the Nazi holds up the idol, and the tribesmen all quickly bow down and start like saluting this golden idol. And that enables Indiana Jones to make his escape. But I saw that scene recently and I was like, that's what we're doing in society. We're bowing down at the altar of alcohol, glorifying it as if it's some special thing. Now, when you go into a hotel bar and you go to the bar, look, if you will, at how they display the alcohol, right? It's on like 3 or 4 shelves. They've got this beautiful...
It's a shrine.
It is a shrine at the altar of alcohol, right?
Yeah.
So you walk in there and you go, wow, look at all that poison. Oh, gee, that poison is so beautifully... Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have a whiskey. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have a gin. Oh, I'm going to have a vodka. It is ridiculous. We are all bowing down at the altar of attractively packaged poison. We've all been brainwashed, and I invite you to de-hypnotize yourself about it. Now, some people might be saying, yeah, but it relaxes me.
Yeah, no, and that's a misnomer. That's totally inaccurate.
It is true that people describe having a temporary relief from whatever their stress or anxiety is. However, the reality is this. The very thing you're consuming to relieve you of stress and anxiety is actually the cause of your stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
When you drink, especially at nighttime, it creates a disrupted night's sleep. Okay?
Yeah.
Your liver's going to work, your body's going to work to try to get rid of the toxins at nighttime when your body's trying to rest. Okay, so you're essentially clocking in for a night's work the moment that you drink anywhere close to bedtime. In fact, you're better off drinking for breakfast than you are anywhere close to bedtime, because at least then the body's got 16 hours
to metabolize it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what happens? You wake up in the morning, you're tired, you're irritable, right? Because you didn't get a great night's sleep. Now you snap at your wife or your husband or your kids. You get in your car, you say F you to the person who cuts you off. You get frustrated because you're waiting in line at the supermarket or at the store trying to pick something up and the person in front of you is taking too long. You're impatient. You snap at your colleague or your team member. Someone on your staff doesn't do the thing that you expected them to do, and now you raise your voice at them and you get pissed off at them, right? All of these are consequences of that crappy night's sleep, which are consequences of you drinking. And then what happens? You get to mid-afternoon, you're like, oh, geez, I could do with a drink. Can't wait to get to the end of the day and just have a drink and relax. And that's what you do. You go and open your bottle of wine, you have a couple of beers, and you think that you're relaxing, but you're just perpetuating this vicious cycle that you are in, which is creating more irritation, more stress, more anxiety, more 6 out of 10 performance when you could be operating at a 9 out of 10. And then the vicious cycle continues.
Continues, yeah. I mean, anyone that I know over the age of 40 that has a decent, or like a reasonable night out, if you were to ask them, they will all tell you that they'll wake up at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning with a racing heart.
Outrageous. It's terrible that happens. It's shocking. I had a client who was an attorney out of Sacramento, California. Very successful attorney, immigration attorney.
Mm-hmm.
She was drinking because she was stressed and anxious. She would wake up at 2:30 and 3 in the morning, no matter what, for 2 straight years and could not get back to sleep, no matter how much she tried.
Yeah.
Like you described, racing
Yeah.
heart, right? Racing mind, discomfort, irritability. Imagine being forced to wake up between 2:30 and 3 and do your job, like as an immigration lawyer, and be a great wife to your husband and look after 2 young kids is what she had. Disaster. She came to us. We helped rewire her mindset. We helped dehypnotize her. She stopped drinking alcohol in a like-minded community of other attorneys and doctors and entrepreneurs and executives and high achievers. And in 90 days, we took her through a process. She stopped drinking. Suddenly, she slept right through to at least 6 a.m.
Wow.
Okay? And that showed up with her losing 20 pounds. And get this is the craziest thing. She went to Australia, right? She lives in Sacramento, but she went to Australia and she did a deal and picked up 800 new clients.
Whoa.
800 new clients as a result of the clarity and the focus and the energy that she attributed to being many months alcohol-free. And most importantly, she got her self-confidence back. She became much more present with her husband. She became a better mother. And she made like multiple millions of dollars. I actually caught up with her and we had our annual retreat in Sedona, Arizona last January. And she was just tipping people $100 at a time. I mean, that's how much money she'd made, right? She's just $100. Here's $100 to the bus. Well, here's $100 for parking my car. She had literally had wads of $100 around. That's how wealthy she became from being alcohol free. That's the power.
That's huge. I mean, and it reminds me, it's like performance equals potential minus interference.
Performance equals potential minus interference. I like that. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to use that in all of my media reviews coming up, John. I'm promoting my book that's out April 8, and I'm going on CNN and NBC and a few places over here to promote the book. So I'm going to use that. Let me write it down.
You can run the hell out of that.
Let me put it on here.
So the new book's clear. So obviously we'll make sure that people know where they can get that. But is there I guess in broad terms, is there a particular process that you walk people through?
Yeah. So we are not AA. We're not 12 steps. We're not recovery. We're not surrendering to a higher power like you have to do in an AA meeting. We're the exact opposite of that. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Before I tell you how we do it, I'll just tell you why the traditional modalities are completely ineffective and the most ineffective strategy of all. Okay. So the top 3 in my research, and I've been alcohol free for 15 years. I've been studying this for 10. I can say AA has a reported 7% success rate, which means it has a 93% failure rate. Okay. So let that sink in. Now, even
7%.
though AA has helped millions and millions of people over the years, tens of millions of people, it has failed for 93% of the people who have attempted it. Because I would submit, no one wants to go and sit around at an AA meeting and lament the past and talk about the shame and regret and eat a stale donut and drink a $1 coffee. And you're sitting around there with a 19-year-old meth addict who's holding up gas stations. And if you're a 40-something, 50-something business owner, how the hell can you relate to a late teenager who's holding up liquor stores? You can't. So of course, it's not a like-minded community. It's a community.
Yeah.
But it's not a like-minded community, right? Rehab centers, 5% success rate. People pay 30, 60 grand a month to go to these things. And then the return rate, like the people who have to come back because once they leave, they return to old ways, is so astronomically high that the greatest and most villainous, I would submit, business model in the world is running a rehab center because they ethically know that their service sucks and they still charge 60 grand a month for it. Like it's horrendously low. The least effective of all, which I guarantee you've probably tried before you stopped, and many of your listeners have tried, is willpower and motivation and white knuckling it. That's so ineffective to be actually laughable, right? It's so bad. And if you're listening to me now, you probably tried dry January, sober October, moderation, I'll only drink on weekends. And yet you're listening intently to this podcast interview right now because there's something that we're saying, that John and I are saying, that's speaking to you, where you're pondering your relationship with alcohol. And if you're really honest with yourself, you would probably have to say willpower, motivation, moderation has been long-term ineffective, okay? So we don't do that. at Alcohol Free Lifestyle, we have an empowering 90-day stop drinking process, which uses neuroscience, the latest studies on happiness, wellness, nutrition, mobility, exercise, conscious communication. We use all the latest studies on how the mind works and how the mind seeks pleasure. We teach our clients about the role of dopamine, what happens when we drink alcohol and the dopamine receptors light up. We show our clients how to light up their dopamine receptors without alcohol from doing natural things, holistic activities. And most importantly, we have our clients go through a like-minded community. So the community of other members who you engage with when you go through this 90-day stop drinking process are executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors, articulate, well-educated, dare I say it, affluent folks, right? You're not dealing with a 20-something who's going out and getting pissed at a nightclub on the weekend. We don't allow those folks in. We only allow people who are, mostly late 30s. Cutoff is really 40, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then we take them through this empowering lifestyle, right? You're choosing a lifestyle and you're not being sober or in recovery or trying to get clean. We don't use that verbiage, right? We're not giving you a little medal because you've reached 30 days being sober. No, all of that language, all that traditional language has a 7% success rate. Instead, we invite people to choose a style of life. And that style of life or a lifestyle is great sleep, conscious communication, how to repair your relationship with your wife or husband, how to be the best role model for your children, how to be the best leader in your business, how to be calm and patient, how to remove irritability and stress and anxiety. And we support our members do that. And through that process of not drinking for 90 days, all of a sudden they get to day 90 and they go, I love this. I'm going to continue choosing this lifestyle. So that is how we're different. The University of Washington over in the States did a scientific study on our stop drinking process in 2023, and it found a 98% reduction in drinking amongst the study participants. And that generated a lot of worldwide media coverage at the time. And that's the same process that we use to help high achievers to choose an alcohol-free lifestyle.
Hey, that's epic. It's so good. I had no idea that the AA thing had such a low success rate. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, AA folks who it's worked for will defend AA until they die, which is great. I actually received quite a lot of hate mail on my social media because some of my social media posts simply shares that 7% success rate. And instead of arguing against the study that I'm referencing, they argue against me, the person who's the messenger of the study. And so they'll call me a snake oil salesman and I should be ashamed of myself for talking down about something that's helped millions of lives. And don't listen to this guy. He just wants your money. Go to AA. It's free. And what I say is the reason that AA has a 7% success rate is because it's free and because it's not with like-minded people and because you're in a group where you're paying $1 for a coffee and you're eating stale donuts and you're lamenting the past. And because you're using terms like sobriety and sober and treatment and recovery, I'm like, all of this stuff is keeping us in an identity that doesn't serve us. I say get rid of that verbiage, get rid of those labels, stop referring to yourself as an alcoholic. You're not an alcoholic. The term alcoholic doesn't even exist in medical literature these days. The actual medical term used is now alcohol use disorder. The term alcoholic and alcoholism no longer exists in the modern medical field because they realized that it was just a label.
Yeah.
It's now AUD, alcohol use disorder. But people don't know this, and I get it. I'm trying to educate folks. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to try and educate some of your listeners. But, like I said, try to dehypnotize yourself if you can, because, the consequences of drinking, even modestly, in your 40s, 50s, and 60s are pretty dire.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was certainly the most challenging thing was training the people around you that you don't do it anymore. But I understand that for other people, there's a psychological attachment to it. There's that, I want, physically, I want to continue to drink. So there's that. But I love the idea of, the guy that runs the restaurant where I play an acoustic gig every couple of weeks, he gave up drinking. And he said that at the point where he was drinking, I think he said he was drinking a bottle of bourbon a week, which probably doesn't sound like maybe that much, but for him to be consuming like a big bottle of bourbon a week, but he used to drink with his wife. And he said when he gave up, he literally had to reacquaint himself with his wife because he didn't really have, you know what I mean? Like to develop a relationship with her that didn't revolve around what they did at night, which was to drink every night. He said literally, he said that there was this massive adjustment thing.
A lot of people realize that when they stop drinking alcohol, a lot of their friendships were just based on alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you remove the alcohol, maybe you don't have that much to talk about.
Well, that's what I found. That's what I found. There was a bunch of people that was pretty much the main thing that I had in common with them. And I still know those people. I still like those people. I still talk to those people. But the nature of the relationship changed, most definitely.
There's a chapter in my book which is called The Uncomfortable Clarity of Your New Reality. And what people find who stop drinking alcohol is that suddenly they realize maybe I'm not with the right partner. Maybe this marriage has come to an end and it's time to end this. And deep down, they've known that for many years, but they've been procrastinating on it and avoiding that tough conversation. So as much as I can say, look, stopping drinking alcohol will give you profound benefits, health, wealth, love, and happiness. Initially, it can be very uncomfortable because that uncomfortable clarity, you start looking and go, oh, is this person really my friend? Is this really how I want to be living my life? Is this person I go to sleep with every night really the person that I'm going to go to sleep with for the next 20 years? I feel like we're just completely on different paths here. And it can be a really unsettling wake-up call.
Yeah.
So I'd love to say it's all sunshine and rainbows. It will all be sunshine and rainbows in the end, I promise you.
Eventually, yeah.
And if it isn't yet then it's not yet the end, right? If it's not that way now, it is not yet the end. But, it can be uncomfortable. But here's the thing. People let that perceived discomfort prevent them from stopping in the first place because they don't want to face that. They procrastinate and they kick the can down the road and then they keep drinking and then another year goes by and then years go by and then decades go by. So you kind of got to rip the Band-Aid off and just go, enough. I'm not going to stand for this anymore. And it's uncomfortable. And that's why people keep drinking because that's the familiar, right? It's like a comfort blanket. That person has been there with you for years.
Yeah.
And now you're like thinking, who am I going to be without this blanket? Like, am I going to be dull? Am I going to be boring? Am I going to love my wife anymore? Am I going to love my husband anymore? Am I going to even stay in this job? Am I going to stay in this business? And change can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so scares you to the point that we stay in the monotony of being stuck.
Yeah, yeah.
Until
one of the things that I realized is that people drink less when they're around me. So my parents drink less when they're around me. My wife drinks less than when she's around me. So there's a leadership piece in there as well. Like it's
yeah, John, I don't know of anything as profound of an impact that you can make in people than you choosing to be alcohol free.
Yeah.
I don't think a politician or a judge or a police officer or anyone can make such a profound impact in your family or generations to come from your bloodline than you stopping drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Because here's what happens. You generate clarity and focus. You're less stressed, you're less anxious. You become a role model to the people who engage with you on a daily basis, your friends, your wife, your children, your listeners, your staff, your teammates, right? They see you living your best life, being alcohol free. And even if the conversation never happens, even if you never have a conversation about alcohol, they're watching you. They're observing you. They're experiencing you. And if, as you've just submitted, people drink less around you, guess what? You've just had a profound impact in those people's lives.
Yeah.
And think about the ripple effect of them reducing alcohol and maybe one day quitting because they saw you and engaged with you, living your best life being alcohol-free. Imagine their children, their friends, their staff, their colleagues.
The knock-on effect, yeah.
Their barista who they order the coffee from in the morning. How they engage with that person is now going to be so much nicer and more pleasant because they're not irritable and hungover from drinking. And now that barista is now going to feel good about his or her job because the client or the customer engaged with him or her in such a pleasant way. And now that extends to his or her day. And then those people are impacted. Like, make no mistake, you choosing to be alcohol-free will create generational impact in your family.
Yeah, definitely. Well, James, I think that's a really good place for us to step off. Mate, I've really enjoyed our chat as I imagined that I would. Thanks so much for coming on. James's new book is called Clear. When is it released?
It's released April 8.
Awesome. How can you get on the waiting list?
Yeah, go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/clear and you'll get on the waiting list there. And there's some free bonuses and things like that. And then from April 8, it'll be available wherever books are sold online, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, etc. Yeah, so thanks very much for having me, John. I appreciate you allowing me to share my views about alcohol and alcohol-free living.
Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. Love it. Well, mate, we might have to even have you on at another stage if you're up for it. I'm always keen to have great conversations with people that are doing great things, mate. So, once again, thanks for being on, and I'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome, and thank you, John.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies and maximize your sales process with new episodes every other week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive, free, no fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.